Good evening, everybody. John had a geriatric moment and didn't hit the countdown screen. I'm getting really bad about that. I see that go live orange button up at the top. I'm like, ooh, that looks pretty, and I click it. It's like I got ADHD. Before I go off on some weird rant, let's start the recording, and we shall proceed with the Liberty Talk.
The Constitution isn't just a document. It's a blueprint for freedom. We're breaking down politics at every level, exposing government overreach, and going where the mainstream media surely won't. Join us in defending individual rights against the bureaucratic tide. You're listening to the Missouri Liberty Report.
All righty, folks, and we are back with another lovely edition, almost Christmas edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. Now, be forewarned, if you tune in next week, I have started a tradition on this show. I think I started it last year, or maybe it was a year before. I don't remember. But every year, the show right before Christmas, you just best damn well be ready for the Sabaton video about the first year, 1914. People stopped fighting, celebrate Christmas, and the next day they just go back to blowing each other up. It's a really wild, crazy story, but I like to play the video and the song every year. So just prepare yourself for a little snap. But that'd be next week. This week we got all kinds of stupid stuff to talk about, just like normal. You can't just you can't get away from it. It's just there in the ether. And you look across the Mississippi River, if you dare, into Illinois territory, and you'll see stupid gun storage laws. Or you get on Facebook and see Jess Piper saying something stupid about guns. Or you look at St. Louis County's spending problem and revenue problems, and $81 million problem they have. That's a big problem. $81 million for any town is really stupid. So we've got all that plus some other stuff that we're going to get into. But Brandon, if you were going to bring up the first topic of the night, what would it be?
Ooh, let's start with Illinois gun laws.
Right on. All right, let me share. All right, where's it at? There it is, right there. So yeah, this one comes from okay. If I can get my Capital News, Illinois. This is I don't know how many more reasons people need to move out of that state besides everything else. I mean, you got Jabba the Hutt Pritzker, who looks like he eats the profits of every restaurant around him, and then spends all your money too and finds new ways to tax you. But then they come up with this new bill that they didn't just come up with it. He just signed it. Senate Bill 8, known as the Safe Gun Storage Act, in late July, which prohibits gun owners from storing their weapons in an unsecured way at any location where they know that the gun could be accessed by a minor, a person at risk of harming themselves or others, or by a person who is prohibited from possessing a firearm. Under the law, gun owners will be required to keep them in a locked container so that they are inaccessible or unusable by anyone other than the owner. Owners who violate the law could be subject to fines as high as $10,000. Gun owners must also report lost or stolen firearms to police within 48 hours of discovering a gun missing. That's down from the previous 72-hour requirement. State lawmakers passed a bill in response to the murder of Springfield resident Sonia Massey in 2024. Massey, a black woman, was killed when former Sangamon County Sheriff's Deputy Sean Grayson, a white man, I love how they have to inject the race in here, shot her in her kitchen while investigating a reported prowler. Grayson was convicted of second degree. Oh, this is background checks for police officers. Sorry, I didn't read that little tidbit there. Was convicted of second-degree murder in October. And it was reported in 2024 that Grayson had a history of reprimands and disobeying superiors at departments that previously employed him, which begs the question, why did you hire him and have him come on to your department? But anyway, Brandon, go ahead, lead us with your thoughts on this. I don't so much care about the background checks for police officers. We can get into that, but the gun storage law. Let's talk about that. Jesus.
I mean, I'm not, again, I think the government having any form of way of confiscating your guns is bad, obviously. Like, again, I talk about it a million times. I'll say it a million more. The Second Amendment is not just to protect you from like home invaders. It is to protect you against tyranny. And so with that in mind, I'll say that like in my house in general, my guns are locked up. Like if there were minors around that I knew, I would lock my guns away. It just depends on who's coming to the house or whatnot. I think what I don't want to see is laws like this used to restrict people. And I think the fine of $10,000 is insane. And again, I'm not a law. I don't think the law is going to fix any of the gun violence issue that you see in inner cities. I don't think that people locking their guns away is going to solve that, or I don't know. So, but again, I don't think I think it's common sense that people need to lock their guns if they're around mentally unstable people, or if they're around children that haven't been trained and aren't properly equipped with firearms. But this law is not going to prevent any, like someone would have to call and report that, hey, he had a gun and there was I don't know. Just the whole point of the law seems like it's not going to fix gun violence. And so what's the point anyway? Just to fine people?
Yeah, and not to mention the fact, look at what they've done with their, oh, well, you can't hold people on bail for trespassing or attempted kidnapping and this. So they'll go above and beyond to not make sure that people maybe make it to their court case after they've been, arrested for certain crimes, right? But if you don't store your gun the right way, you're going to get hit with a $10,000 fine or up to. So they would rather hammer you with fines than hammer someone who's been caught in the act of, like, again, attempted kidnapping or trespassing, things like that. Oh, well, we'll make sure you better show back up to court. And it's like, what are we doing? So Illinois, just in like a lot of other states as well, are getting into this habit of that's a good one. But they have this habit of just going after law-abiding citizens and putting the onus on them rather than, I don't know, convict. If someone is being arrested of a violent crime or even attempting a violent crime, they seem to get a little more leeway than law-abiding citizens do, because they're not storing their guns the way the state decides that they need to. And it's just again, they're going to come up with all this arbitrary stuff, and this is their attempt, and this is their way of saying, like, see, we're trying to do something about gun crime, but you got these rednecks out there that don't want to put their guns up at all the time. Like, well, no, some people, especially if you forget, like, let's say the gun is in a gun cabinet, but you can see through and you forget to lock the door, right? And somebody has to open that door to get it out and play with it. I mean, I don't know. Again, if you got little kids running around and you've got guns in a drawer somewhere or something, maybe you want to put them up out of reach, right? So they can't see them and they don't get to them. I'm fine with that. I think that if you own firearms, you should attempt to be a responsible gun owner. And if you have children, that you teach them how to handle firearms responsibly and safely, and that they don't just go in a house and pick up a gun and start playing with it and all those things. But when they're at certain ages, kids don't understand consequences if they pull the trigger and it's loaded. It's a round chambered and they shoot something or someone. They they can't comprehend that, right? That's hard for them to comprehend it because they just haven't lived, they haven't been on the earth long enough and seen enough things to have a full understanding. So sometimes, yes, putting your guns and just going ahead and locking them in a gun cabinet while you have like maybe some family members over with kids who are might be a little unruly or don't listen well. That's not a bad idea. But I feel like sometimes this is a way of this just leads to a thing where like everybody just has to keep their guns locked up. Like, oh, great. So if someone kicks in my door, I have to run to the place that my gun is locked away at. Hopefully I can get it out in time and I don't get murdered in my own home. Because this step like this could lead to things like that. That's what bothers me, because in Illinois, as far as restricting your natural right of self-defense, obstructing that to them is like their wet dream. Anything they can do to mess with law-abiding gun owners, they will go out of their way to just make their lives miserable. So I don't like laws like this. I'm with Brandon here. I don't like the state dictating how you're going to store your firearms and what situations you're going to store your firearms. I know it's asking a lot, but that should be common sense for most people. And most people do have that type of common sense, right? Most people know, oh, hey, I got little kids coming over. I'm going to get these guns and put them up. That's what most people do. You have the few idiots that don't, but those are, yeah. Kevin Spacey says, don't worry, the criminals will have their guns locked up too. I'm sure they will. But yeah, just one of the stupid things that Illinois is doing right now. And, shocker, right? Jesus
Well,
Christ.
you really hit the nail on the head with your point a second ago about how the liberal politicians have a habit of letting criminals back onto the streets. Like the pushes for, like they basically, and I'm not saying that all of these laws are 100% right, but they basically taken away a lot of reasons that police in cities can pull over. Like if your taillight's not working or if your plates are expired or that kind of stuff, they in big cities, they're telling police officers like, don't pull people over for those things. And then in those searches, they'll like find more hardened criminals. Like you run someone's background, you find out, oh, they've got felony warrants. And so cops arrest criminals that way. But then also they're doing the no cash bails in like major cities. And so they're not actually out to curtail gun violence. They let the violent criminals back out on the streets. You had a few famous cases where that woman was attacked on the subway, I believe in New Jersey. Yep. And that guy had a rap sheet a mile long. I mean, you see it a few times a year that the stories become national headlines where these violent criminals had been let out 30 or 40 different times and out committing more violent crime. So if you wanted to curtail most of the violence in these cities, you would be arresting the criminals and locking them up. You wouldn't have arbitrary rules. Plus the government, especially enforcement laws, are sometimes just terrible at nuance. Like if you were hunting with a 12-year-old and you put your rifle in the case and zipped it up, but you didn't lock it, it wasn't safely stored while you were around a minor, then they could come after you. Even though I'm pretty sure in Missouri, especially, once you pass your hunter safety course at like 12 or 13, you can hunt with a rifle on your own. So the law is kind of weird where it's like a minor, you can't have your guns not locked up around minors, but minors at 13 can go out with rifles and go hunting. And so, like I said, the government's terrible with nuance. They're not going to differentiate, especially if a cop just wants to write someone a ticket. It just gives them more justification to do so. So, yeah, I think the whole thing is stupid. I think more than they're actually after like a big check or anything like that. I think it's just a way for these Democrat lawmakers to be like, look, see, we did something about gun violence. Look, we signed the law. And in reality, all it does is have to make sure that people's guns are locked up. But enforcement on that too is another thing, because what are you going to monitor everyone's guns? All could just come knock on, hey, we know you have a gun because of your gun registration card. We want to come check your house and make sure you have everything. Because like conservation agents in Missouri, they don't have to have a warrant to search you. If they just even, like, if you're a hunter, they can search your vehicle with no warrant just to check to see if you don't have illegal game. Or, the game wardens can do it for fishing too. So yeah, I think it's a slippery slope when you start allowing, government issued cards for owning firearms, and mandatory ways they have to be stored. So you could see the leeway opening up for them having random enforcement checks on something like that. So
Yeah, here's the other problem too, is that they will. So, good Lord, I forgot where I was going with this. Give me a moment. Nope, it's lost.
was it something about like the government? Well, they'll write you a ticket. Some cops just want to write you tickets, and so
Yeah, I'm just about fed up with. Oh, I remember where I was going with this. So, like the bailless, arrest that they do, right, or whatever, bailless, whatever.
no cash
Yeah,
bail.
no cash bail, right? And they'll use the excuses like, well, it's not fair to those people less fortunate. Or they'll be like, well, we have a lot of overcrowding in our jails. Yes, because you've written all these laws against, for victimless crimes where there's no victim. And you've thrown a lot of people in jail where there's a victimless crime. And yeah, no wonder your prisons are overpopulated, but that's okay because you got that cool civil asset forfeiture and all those other things, that federal money for helping them out, helping them enforce those awful laws. So you're just making money hand over fist off all this stuff. But yeah, again, they want to do cashless bail or whatever, but they don't want to. Again, they don't want to enforce the laws where there is a victim, and then they want to throw a lot of people in jail for victimless crimes. The whole thing is screwed up, right? The whole system is seemingly turned on its head. And it's funny that when you want to just enforce, like, you want to enforce laws where there's clearly a victim, whether it's rape, homicide, assault, kidnapping, things like this. You want to enforce those and go, listen, you can't go around harming other people. But if you have like back in the day, if you had too many plants of a certain nature, oh man, there's a minimum mandatory sentencing, for that. You're going to have to go and you live 2,000 feet from a school. Now you have to go to jail for 15 years, all the stupid stuff that they've done, and then cry about overcrowded prisons. And then, yeah, and instead of saying, maybe we should rethink this and not have all these crimes that don't involve a victim, right? Maybe we should get rid of those and stop enforcing them and worry about the homicide and the assaults and the robberies and all that. Nope. We're gonna split hairs, and we're gonna do really dumb things that entices criminals to keep being criminals. Again, a couple years ago, I had a guy, a chief of police. I don't remember what town he was from, but St. Louis area, where he was talking about they had a problem. Their juvenile centers were flooded. So they would catch kids doing stuff like, it could be stealing cars, robbery, carrying drugs. Cops pick them up, and then they would just say, kick them back to their parents. And then the older kids found out, oh man, these kids don't even get stuck in juvie. So we can have them do it for us, because if we get popped, we will go to jail. These guys just get sent back home to mom and dad. So this is perfect. Now, that issue is being resolved and things are starting to turn around, but there was a stretch of time where if your kid got caught stealing a car, you just got sent home. Now, how is a kid going to learn? If he's able to sneak out, commit multiple offenses, sending him back home to mom and dad clearly isn't solving anything. Now, I'm not saying that I want the state to like, well, just create this other home. They're not really orphans or, homeless kids, but we'll build this new system and we'll put all these kids that won't um um that can't obey the law, we'll put them in a special place, right? And then we don't kick them back to mom and dad, but we won't put them in a juvenile center. We'll just have this in between. Like, what do they call that? Halfway houses for juveniles or something, right? Tom says Illinois Constitution, Article what is it? Article 1, Section 24 is almost identical to the U.S. Constitution, Ninth Amendment. Interesting. I will be on. Tom, give us more description there, my friend, if you would. Type that in the comments section. Also, Shady J, it's good to see you in the comments section as well. Since we're on that, I'm sorry. I gotta find it. Where did it go? Nope. I lost it somewhere. Oh, what? Why am I? Why am I getting?
I got something real quick since we're talking about victimless crimes, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, because for some reason, Channel 5 page just decided to start a video without me touching anything. That was really awesome. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, let me move this over so I can. There we go. So, shoot, my bad. So, as a sheriff in Carroll County, Missouri, who hasn't prosecuted a DUI in like a year, and there's some whistleblower former officers, they not going by their real names, but going by aliases in the article, but basically saying that anytime someone would get pulled over for a DUI or DWI, they would allegedly the sheriff was telling the his deputies to deal with the case kind of like careless and imprudent driving, like evasive, dangerous driving, or they could call the highway patrol or have them call for a ride. So the one thing I'll say is that I'm sure that if someone was drunk and they wrecked into somebody or they wrecked into like a tree or a building or something, that they would have prosecuted at some point, because nowhere in the article does it mention any sort of like crazy DWI case that they didn't prosecute. They just mentioned that they haven't prosecuted any cases. And so in my mind, part of me just feels like, obviously driving drunk is very dangerous, and if you get caught doing it, I'm not saying there shouldn't be any penalties for it, but some people would argue that the current penalties they have on the books for it is pretty steep, depending, because it's like I said, there's no nuance to it. Like if you blew like a 0.10, which is I think like 0.08, like a bit, maybe just barely above like the legal limit, and you were going like 2 blocks from your house, that's a huge difference between if you blow like a 0.25 and you were swerving on a major highway. And so I don't know, like since we're talking about victimless crimes, like especially if you get pulled over for something like a bad brake light and you just happen to have had a couple drinks, happen to have been over the legal limit, they'll slap you with, you could lose your license, they'll slap you with thousands of dollars of fines, you got to pay a lawyer thousands of dollars. And so part of me is just like, I feel for this sheriff, not prosecuting these victimless crimes in a way. I don't know. I wanted to get your take on it. I saw that story and I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, do you want cops picking and choosing which? I think if a police department feels that a law is unconstitutional or immoral, they shouldn't enforce it, right? They should not enforce that. I mean, I think if you've got someone out there hammered driving, and I mean, they are all over the place. To me, there's a big difference between that and you've had a drink or two spaced out over an hour or so, and your limit's up a little bit. but everything's fine. You're just, like I said, you got to pull over a brake light. But if you're all over the place swerving and you're putting lives in danger, that's another thing, right? Like there's a good chance you could kill someone. Now if you wreck the car and you're just by yourself and you hurt yourself, well, that's your own stupidity, right? But it's like how you can't get a crystal ball out and see the future. What's going to happen if this guy's like, yeah, he's blowing like instead of a point one, he blows like a 0.16, and you're like, good God, double the legal limit. Then it's just like, yeah, I don't think I want that guy behind the wheel of a car. Now, I will say it's seemingly since when I was growing up, like the I don't know that I don't hear of people getting DWIs like I used to. I think a lot of people with Uber and Lyft and all these other things, people are more responsible than they used to be. Now, you still see idiots get out there and get hammered and driving. But I think to me, I just don't see people or hear about people getting DWIs like they used to just seemingly hand them out like mad. And I think people have finally come to the uh, conclusion that it's not a good idea to get behind the wheel of a car when you're plastered. Uh, Now I have, and just like Shady J says, I had an officer call me to pick someone up that was driving drunk years ago. They got very lucky. I work with a gentleman. His dad would go out somewhere and get plastered, and the cops would bring him home. Now he generally wasn't trying to drive, but he was like, dude, before I was legal driving age. He goes, I would drive him home because he would be so drunk. And the cops would just see him somewhere and be like, all right, let's get you home. That's the way it kind of was back in the day. They saw you and they're like, let's get you home. For the people that they saw, right? And it's yeah, Shady J said it's a very expensive mistake. Um, to go back to what Tom was talking about earlier with the Illinois Constitution, subject only to the police power, the right of the individual citizen to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And they've completely forgotten what that means. I think they forgot. I think someone went into every copy of the state constitution and just like took a Sharpie and scribbled out the word not. So they think it says shall be infringed. I think that's what happened. Or every time they print it now, they just forget the not. They're like, oh, we made another typographical error. All our bad. My yeah, Kevin says we should ban drinking and driving, then ban guns. Yeah, that'll just solve everything, right? Just like in where that shooting was in Australia.
Well, there was also one at Brown University too.
Yep. But
So
see, the
those
thing
two-
is, the Australians are like, we have to write more gun laws. It's like, what do you mean? You confiscated all the guns. You confiscated all the guns from the law-abiding people. Why do you need more gun laws? This was supposed to solve everything.
I was looking it up, and apparently, like 4 million people in Australia have a gun license in some capacity, but that's first of all, I'm pretty sure way lower than America's rate of gun ownership.
God, yes.
But then also, like you said, you still have to apply. You have to have the background check and all of that. And then the same thing with kind of like the same thing in the shooting at Brown University. You've got a state with some of the strictest gun laws. You've got, it was in a gun-free zone. And the crazy part about the shooting that happened in Australia is how long it took, like just how long it went on. How long before the police arrived, before the police actually went into action to stop the violence. Because I saw it was a shooting happened in Texas at a church. The guy got off one shot before someone else in the crowd shot him. It lasted all of 10 seconds tops. And so it's, when you see a place that has all those gun restrictions and then you do get the criminal with the gun, you get to see just how much damage one person can do with a gun. So sure, everyone talks about, got to take away all the guns. It's the guns, the guns, the guns. And I'm sure we brought this up on the show. 1 million violent encounters are stopped buy guns every year without a bullet being fired. So just the presence of having the gun, just the fear of being shot before you commit a violent act, stops people from committing a violent act. Like, you think those two guys would have been as brave to go out there and start shooting if half the people in the crowd had a gun? If 1 in 10 people in the crowd had a gun? You think those guys are going to go out there and just start shooting from up top? No, because they would have been dead in 1 second. They wouldn't have got to kill 16 people and shoot 12 more, or whatever the number ended up being.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, get your whole, it's the guns out of here, because it's not the guns, it's the crazy people.
When you have a country that says if you buy your kid a Nerf gun, you have to register the Nerf gun in Australia. Clearly, you got plenty of gun laws, and if we base how society is going to act on by its laws, then there should just be no gun crime in Australia, right? They got gun laws coming out the wazoo. There shouldn't be there shouldn't be any shooting at all, because people willingly gave up their firearms. They did it in the UK too. Now you just get stabbed a lot. Then they had knife conflict, drop your kitchen knives off in these boxes. And I think they got rid of they made samurai swords illegal in the UK now, stuff like that. So yeah, it's just going full tilt. Pretty soon you're just gonna have to beat each other to death with clubs, because everything sharp or anything that fires a projectile will just be non-existent, and it'll just be clubbing crimes. It'll just be like clubbing seals, but instead you're just clubbing Brits. I don't know. It's just this stuff. Again, I don't know why these people don't revolt. I just don't understand. But as generations come along,
they don't have any guns.
But it's just like literally what happened to torches and pitchforks, and I say like Molotov cocktails and stuff. What are you doing? I don't make really high-powered slingshots. Somebody takes a rock to the forehead that might straighten them out. I don't know. Do something. You're just like, I kind of like not having all these guns around. Like, oh, you like being stabbed willy-nilly? You like the rape gangs that have come along? You can't do nothing about them either, because the government doesn't seem to be too worried about it. You can't shoot them on sight. So why would you want to be stuck in a country like that? Or I just don't get it. Why would you want to live in a place like that where your ability to defend yourself from violence is like they've taken all the equalizers away? They're like, well, good luck. I guess you better go out and learn some of that jujitsu or something. Like, yeah, I'm just going to put this guy in an arm bar until he gives up and hope he doesn't take the gun and go like this and shoot me in the face. Cool. Thanks, Prime Minister Butt Munch. I'll get right on that.
Yeah. At a certain point, they get to arrest you for your social media posts because you've given up any sort of resistance towards organized tyranny. Like, I commend, obviously, America's ownership of firearms, but it just makes you curious about how many people would be willing to actually stand up and fight when the push came to shove. How many people are willing to risk not coming home to their TVs and, their air conditioned, their McDonald's and their junk food, and just, how many people are willing to risk all that comfort for a little dangerous freedom?
Mm-hmm. Let me see. Where did I? Oh, yeah. And then we have this jewel from the likes of none other than Jess Piper.
Oh, my favorite.
I'm a gun owner. My entire inheritance from my dad was guns. That said, we should regulate guns. What an argument. What an argument to be made. I have guns. So, but that being said, I still want you to regulate them. There's no way this woman ever fires any of them. There's no way. There's no way she loads some ammo. She fills a mag, whatever. There's no way she goes out and shoots him. She probably thinks, if someone comes in my home, I'll throw the gun at them. and just hope I hit them in the head and knock them unconscious. And then I don't know what she'll do after that. She'll probably talk to him about the greatness of progressives, and they'll beg to go to prison. Like, she'll just read from the progressive book, and they're like, just for God's sakes, lady, call the cops and get me hauled out of here. I can't take this anymore.
Have you guys heard about the school choice? Have you heard about the school choice? Oh, gosh, just lock me up.
What about Medicaid for all? Can we get Medicare for all? They're like, oh,
No.
my God, lady, just shoot me in the face.
They'll be banging down her door, and she'll just be yelling, do you guys have those guns locked up? Were they locked up? Are they away from the minors?
Yeah.
Because that's how you keep people safe. They'll be knocking, my guns are locked up in a safe.
And put a sign out in the yard that says, I store my guns responsibly. And like, oh, well, we can break in there because by the time we get to her, she can't get in that locked thing. She probably stored the bullets 3 rooms away, so she'd have to go in, unlock the thing, then run to the other room and load the mag and then slap it in, try to figure out how to rack the slide and all kinds. She'd be messed up before it is said and done.
I just want to know what she means by regulate guns. I hate that phrase. It's, it's the constitutional rights of gun ownership phrases. We need gun regulation. That could mean 100 different things.
Absolutely. Yes.
Like,
Shady says
saying
she wanted money.
economy.
She wanted money inheritance. She's mad she got guns instead. Yeah, Tom's got a good point. She never purchased a gun in her life. Inheriting one doesn't make her a gun owner. Fair enough. And then Kevin Spacey here, God, that name. In Australia, you have to belong to a gun club to own a gun, and you have to keep it there. Yeah, because that'll keep you safe. Like, hey, guys, I know you want to kick my ass right now, but let's drive down to the gun club so I can get the equalizer out. And they're like, all right, Mike, we'll just drive on down there. I'll ride my kangaroo over there, and then you can pull out your rifle and try to shoot at me as I'm running away. And you're like, all right, cool. That sounds fantastic, you idiot.
Oh,
yeah, holy smokes. Let's go into this, since we're on the thing of dumb money spent and money inheritance and everything else. Let's talk about this St. Louis County facing 81. Let me share the screen first. That would be smart of me. St. Louis County faces $81 million budget crisis. Council, Sam Page, clash over solutions. Well, that's what you get. People of St. Louis County who are hell-bent on you keep re-electing Sam Page back to St. Louis County executive. That's, if this was the Dave Smith show, they'd be like, hey, that's part of the problem. You keep re-electing Sam Page. But anyway, this one is from December 3rd. This is found at KSDK. St. Louis County officials are racing against the clock to finalize the budget before the new year, facing a staggering $81 million deficit that has reignited tensions between the city council and county executive Sam Page. Council members are currently working to draft a new budget, arguing that the financial plan submitted by Page fails to address the county's widening fiscal gap. According to the council, the shortfall includes a $61 million deficit in general revenue and a $20 million deficit in the health fund. Council Chairwoman Rita Hurd Days emphasized that the county must return to its basics to make a dent. We're mandated by our charter and state law as to some of the kinds of things and programming that we must have. Everything else is nice to do, but we just at this particular point cannot afford that. The scale of the financial crisis suggests that a quick fix is unlikely. District 7 Councilman Mark Harder indicated that the council must pursue a combination of spending reductions and new revenue streams. Oh boy. We're going to make some definite cuts. We're going to look for revenue sources as well. And so we've got to do that, to do both in this case. We are so far out of balance right now. There's no way we could balance this in 1 or even 2 years. Page has proposed a different approach to bridge the gap, advocating for the use of settlement funds from the St. Louis Rams relocation lawsuit and the institution of a use tax or online sales tax. The tax is estimated to bring in between $45 and $75 million in new revenue each year. Putting the proposal on the ballot lets voters decide what level of services they want moving forward. However, leadership within the council contends that the issue is not just revenue, but a persistent lack of fiscal restraint within county departments. Days argued that department heads continue to request increased funding regardless of actual spending history. It says, but quote, but each year, even though the departments don't spend 100% of their assessment from the previous year, they're still asking for more money. That's a discipline. We do not have the discipline in this county to address this issue. Harder offered a stark prediction regarding the consequences of following the administration's current trajectory. Quote, if we do nothing like the county executive would like us to do, we will be bankrupt next year, unquote, Harder said. When asked if these cuts would mean job cuts, Harder said that's unclear at this point. We have a fairly high turnover rate because of the age of our employment, and so we've got a lot of folks that are eligible to retire. So I think a lot of it could be handled through attrition as we move forward. The St. Louis County Council plans to vote on budget items at its next two meetings to finalize the budget before the December 31st deadline. I will say, I will make a prediction if they decided that if they decided to put the use tax on the ballot and they were to get between that $45 and $75 million and use some of that St. Louis Rams funding that they got or that's available from the lawsuit, that they would not curtail one penny of spending. They would spend at the continued rate and instead just look for a new source of tax revenue, but not be disciplined in cutting any spend. It's just like the state. We're gonna look at ways to get rid of the income tax, but we're not going to cut spending at all. And so St. Louis County and the state of Missouri seemingly are on the same. Even though the state is not, they're not facing a deficit. If they continue on and they decide to cut the income tax out and they don't curtail spending, then we very well could face a budget or bankrupting the state. And now St. Louis County, it just, again, why do people in St. Louis County continue to elect this idiot? And his first response is, hey, we got to cut spending. No, well, let's look for new ways of revenue. And then every year, every department will just continue to ask for more funding and more funding. Even if they didn't spend all the last year's budget completely, we'll just go ahead and give them an automatic budget increase every year so we can all be cozy buddies, and we can all have a kumbaya, come to Jesus meeting, and I don't know, everybody can feel great and progressive, and we'll just destroy the county and go bankrupt at some point. And it doesn't seem to faze him at all. Just like normal Democrats will just figure out another way to get more money. And we will not fix the spending problem. Now, Tom's got I want to go back because this Australia thing's kind of cool. And then Brandon, we'll go to your reaction here. Tom's got a lot of comments here. He says, firearms must be stored securely in a purpose-built steel receptacle with a minimum thickness of 1.6 millimeters, which must be bolted to the premises if it weighs less than 150 kilograms when empty. The firearm and ammunition must be stored in separate locked containers, and keys to those containers must not be stored together. Transportation of firearms requires them to be unloaded, stored in a padded or hard case, and their operability limited using trigger locks or by removing the bolt. And that is all. Let's see. Oh, yeah, one of the legislative committee members. Yeah, that's right. Tom and the Lock and Smith Foundation, they have a former Aussie who knows all these rules on firearms. I forgot about that. It says one of the legislative committee members is an Aussie and just recently moved here and got naturalized. So just a little more rules from the Aussie side of things, the basically giant floating prison colony, if you will. So just a few more things, but Brandon, back to the St. Louis County snafu. Your thoughts and comments.
I just am shocked that this Rita Hurd Days, she is a Democrat. I didn't know anything about her, so I looked it up. Apparently, she served in the House of Representatives from 93 through the year 2000. She was a state senator and then until 2010. So she spent a good 20 years, close to 20 years in the state legislature. And she's on record saying we can't afford something. So maybe she'll be switching her affiliation from Democrat to something else, because I don't think you're allowed to say that you're not allowed to afford something. I'm shocked that the county council rejected his plan of higher taxes. I thought that was just how the Democrats work. You spend more, you raise budgets, you raise taxes. That's the Democrat strategy for everything. So I'm not shocked. I mean, I'm a little bit shocked just because Sam Page, he's just been, even by Democrat standards, has been a disaster. I've told this story a ton of times, but I worked in St. Louis County during COVID. And there was a stretch from October, or late October, early November through the new year into 2021, where they locked down in-person dining for the second time. Was it the first time from March to May or June, and then the second one from October, November through the new year. And the St. Louis city was open. So you could go to St. Charles County. If you were in St. Louis County, you were never more than a 20-minute drive from a place where you could go and eat, but you just couldn't eat in the county. And so his policies made no sense. And I'm sure the data would show you that it had very minuscule effect on curtailing COVID at the time. And then he also has been in trouble several times for like lying. He lied about, I don't know if he lied, or if he was just misrepresenting some sort of flyer that went out for the county that all but basically told you to vote for some sort of amendment or some sort of county legislation he wanted pushed through, or ballot initiative that he wanted people to vote on. But from the county executive's office, he sent out the legislation that basically told people to vote for it. And so he was in hot water for that. I know a lot of people in St. Louis County who are upset with that too. And so adding on the fact that he's in the county executive of a county that's running $81 million deficits annually. And his response is, like you said, heaven forbid you go over the budget line by line and start figuring out places to make cuts. He immediately is like, no, we're going to go to a use tax. We're going to do an online sales tax. We're tax. But like I said a second ago, that's the Democrat strategy. So, I mean, maybe someday I'll be surprised and Democrats will start fighting for some fiscal sanity. But until then, this is par of the course, really.
Yeah. And when you have, let me pull this one up here. You have, this is from St. Louis City. The mayor is happily talking about this. Today, I signed Board Bill 100, putting reauthorization of the earning tax on the ballot in April. The earnings tax makes up a third of our budget, and without it, every service the city provides, including police and fire services, parks and recreation, maintaining our roads and keeping them free from snow and ice, and so much more, would be severely underfunded and likely impossible to provide in any reasonable way. We are all working hard to improve city services, but the earnings tax is the foundation on which that work rests. Better city services simply aren't possible without the earnings tax. So I'm very grateful to the Board of Aldermen for passing BB 100 earlier today, so the voters will be asked whether to reauthorize the earnings tax for the next 5 years when they go to the ballot box in April. I particularly want to thank Alderwoman Jamie Cox and Antwi, who sponsored this legislation and worked with the majority of the Board of Aldermen as co-sponsors to bring this to my desk. So again, we're not gonna cut spending. We're not gonna figure it out. So if you work and your paycheck is made in the city of St. Louis, I believe Kansas City has a 1% earnings tax, and I believe that St. Louis might be the same way. They might have like a 1% usage tax, or I'm sorry, a earnings tax. So think about this. You pay an income tax. You pay personal property taxes. You pay property taxes. You pay a sales tax. You pay all these other taxes that are supposed to fund police, right? And fire departments and the roads and or what the libraries and the schools and everything else. But oh gee, a third of the budget comes from an earnings tax. What are the budgets like in St. Louis? What are the budgets like that you have to take a percent, or even if it's 1%, people are like, well, it's only 1%. Listen, don't give these people leeway. Don't let them think of 1% is just something measly and nothing to worry about. No, don't let them get you thinking that way. This is another way that government's going to steal a little bit of your earnings that they had no part in. They didn't go to work, and like they don't come to my, like if there was a Hitachi plant in St. Louis, none of them would be in there helping me build a transformer. Not one. Or going around and looking at safety and trying to improve safety. Not one of them's going to be in that building doing that. Not a one. But they're going to want 1% of my check when I get paid. Why? Why is this allowed? And they're just like, well, it's just, and I love how they're so nonchalant too. It's just a third of the budget. Like, good God, a third of your budget is based on an earnings tax. You have a budgetary problem.
Maybe I'm confused here. What is it? I thought an earnings tax was just another way of saying income tax. No? Yeah.
I mean, it basically is. It's just that if you get paid by a company just in St. Louis City, then yeah, the St. Louis, the city takes 1% of your check and moves it to their general revenue. So it's basically an income tax. It only goes to St. Louis City and to fund all this stuff. Tom said they collected $219 million in 2024 with the 1% earnings tax.
I'm not disagreeing with your main point at all, but I will, like, hot take here. My city is about as far as I'm willing to send my tax dollars. Like, it would be okay if the city of O'Fallon, where I reside, had a earnings tax, as long as I wasn't paying such a high income tax to the state and federal government. You know what I mean? Like, not every single tax dollar going to your point, not every single tax dollar going to the federal, state, and local government is to pay for my roads and my bridges. And so at a certain point, yeah, you have to call the line. Whenever your income, like Dave Smith brought up this point, it's worth bringing up here when he was on Megyn Kelly's show this week sometime. He said the people who get screwed are the people in the middle, because we have a massive welfare class for the people at the top. They get the tax breaks, they get the subsidies, they get the regulations that stifle their competition. And then the people at the bottom also have a massive welfare program. They've got food stamps, Medicaid, supplemental income, Social Security. So the people at the bottom and the top are all taken care of. It's the people in the middle who don't qualify for anything at the bottom and who don't compete for anything at the top. Those are the people stuck paying for all of this. Those are the people who get screwed whenever they get no tax breaks, no incentive, no corporate handouts, but they still have to pay 50, 52, 53% of their income into taxes when they have to work like 100 and some odd, 200 some odd days out of the year. Just to, not 200, but you have to work like 100+ days a year just to pay for your portion of taxes when you start making over 80, 90, $100,000 a year. And that's just crazy. I mean, it's the surest way to destroy an empire is take out all of the people and all the incentives for the people working hard in the middle. And so, yeah, at a certain point, like you said, 1% doesn't sound like a lot until you're already paying 51% of your income in taxes. And then that extra 1% is taken presents out from underneath the Christmas tree.
Yeah, and the fact is, like, let's say you lived in O'Fallon, right? And then you drove into St. Louis City and you worked in St. Louis City. Well, they're still taking a percent of that. And so even though you don't live in St. Louis City, they're still getting your hard-earned money, a portion of it, and then spending it on stuff in St. Louis City. So, I mean, I know there's a lot of people that don't live in St. Louis City proper who drive in to work, and they lose a percent every paycheck to the city. So it's residents and non-residents. If you work in St. Louis City, regardless citizen or not, they're taking 1%. And I'm just like, you all need to go remote. And Tom says remote workers living outside the city limits are exempt from the tax. But yeah, everybody who works in St. Louis, resident or not, is losing a percent. And yeah, to your point, when all the other taxes that you pay in, it's like, when is enough enough? When does it cease? When are these people going to be held accountable and get you guys? No, you're not spending it. You either cut funding, funding to certain departments, and you cut spending, or you're all gone. We're done. Like, I mean, I don't know. If I walked into the house, if I worked in St. Louis City and they took 1% of my check, and then I go home and there's some like Asian woman like ready to rub my feet after a hard day's work, I might be like, okay, this 1%'s not so bad. I don't get none of that, right? I don't come home and somebody's cooking me a meal or shoveling the snow off of my driveway and sidewalk or cutting my grass. No, I have to go home and I have to do all those things. It's just I have to pay somebody else and probably a budget and to pay for a budget that's probably way too high, and they probably don't spend it all, or they do like a lot of other state agencies do. When it gets close to the end of the fiscal year, they're like, we got to spend all this money or they'll cut our budget next year. So they go spend it on all office supplies and all this stuff, right? There's always an incentive to spend the money. There is no incentive to save and not spend all the budget. Every department is basically incentivized to spend every penny they get because they know if they don't, it's going to get cut next year, or at least there's a risk of that happening. So you automatically incentivize them to spend it all because who cares? It's not their money per se, right? They're just stealing it from everyone else and then handing it to this department for them to spend willy-nilly. So there's no incentive for them to be responsible. That's the worst part. If I have a bunch of bills to pay and then I look and I might check and I'm like, going to be tight this week. I can't walk across the street to my neighbor and go, I'm going to be about $50 short this week. So, cough it up. No, they're going to punch me in the face and knock me off their porch. The state, the city, the counties, they're just like, I'm just going to take it because, and then again, like Tom says, the morons who live in St. Louis vote on it every 5 years and they pass it. So they're literally participating in their own theft, which is mind blowing. It just, again, how do you not look at your personal property tax bills and your property tax bills and all these other things and not get sick of this at some point? I don't get it. I don't understand.
Kind of unrelated, but so the lady who Kara Spencer was, who she was congratulating or thanking in her post, Jami Cox on Twee. So Kara Spencer won the mayoral election last year, and then that county council seat, city council seat, opened up, and a different Democrat actually won the primary or received the nomination, like the endorsement for that seat, and Kara Spencer had personally endorsed the Cox on Twee lady, and so helped spring load her to get that seat in the first place, which is why she's going to get a lot of her agenda pushed through that she wants. Like anything that comes out of the city council is coming from her because she's got her people in there pumping out the bills she wants. But separately, I went and door knocked for the Libertarian candidate who ran for that open council seat. And boy, it like feels different being in downtown St. Louis, knocking, like going door to door out there, because you've got certain neighborhoods that are pretty run down and like whole buildings that you just don't even want to go knock on. You like, different places that you're like totally trying to avoid. But then even the ones that have like the cut grass and everything, they've got the sign out front that's like, this house believes that anybody can be anything they want all the time, and that we're just the most progressive house ever. Here's our sign. And then they've all got different flags hanging of all different colors, meaning all different things. And it's really like, coming from, a 45-minute drive across the river from suburbia, like I understand that to a certain degree, we all want the same things out of life, but just seeing the way that the ideology takes hold in a big city where like, it's not just like certain people pushing narratives. It's the whole of the city. Like all of the Democrat voters, which makes up a large majority of the city, they believe in all of it. Like they don't like, I'm not, Trump supporters aren't much better in that regard, but I mean, just it's I guarantee you 20 years ago, the people in those areas weren't hanging those flags. They were progressive for the time, sure, but they were nowhere like 25 years ago in the early 2000s. From people I talked to, they just tell you it wasn't like that. It wasn't like everyone had to project to how progressive they were all the time.
And virtue signal.
Right. And I'm sure there were people out there doing that. And I'm sure like, it had its moments. But like the conservatives in certain areas, they've always, they're for limited government. They've always, like Republicans in Missouri have pretty much in general supported military aggressiveness. It just doesn't feel like it's just such a dramatic change as when I went walking around in downtown St. Louis. Like not just like the areas that had been run down, but just the progressive areas that have just like it swept way more than anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, you're brave soul, because I would have had an AR slung if I was going door knocking in St. Louis. I'm like, all right, well, I'm just gonna sling my AR, and then I'll be like, knock, knock, libertarian speaking here. And they're like, ugh. But anyway, well, since we're still on the topic of money, let's play this. I don't think there was any language in this. It's coming from like Newsmax, but this guy kind of goes on a rant, and it's not necessarily a bad rant. So let's see. Let me play this audio here. Hopefully it's not super loud.
Everyone's like, oh, this is the most important election. No, the most important election of our lifetimes from here on out is the next one. Okay. And then the one after that. And then the one after that. And if Republicans don't make these things into law and get this through their head, they're going to lose. And Republicans are going to sit there in the minority scratching their head. I don't understand why we didn't have turnout. The better question is, Mike Johnson, why would we show up to vote? You haven't thrown a single person in jail. There's no accountability for COVID, and New York Dems ran the guy who literally stuffed elderly patients into retirement homes with COVID and killed people. They blocked meds that would have saved lives. They shut down schools. They forced people to get a vaccine against their will, who then got heart conditions and nothing happened. And they lied about it, coming from some dude that it was in he ate a bat in a wet market while Fauci and his cabal were killing beagles and funding the Wuhan coronavirus lab and expected us to believe that it didn't come from a lab in Wuhan named coronavirus. No one in jail for Russiagate, for censorship. Not one of the 51 former Intel officials who told us that Hunter Biden's laptop was a Russian plant. It actually does turn out that Hunter Biden was, in fact, smoking crack in bathtubs with hookers. You failed to indict Letitia James for like the third time today because you did it wrong the first time. Still haven't charged Adam Schiff for the same mortgage fraud. Looks like James Comey is probably going to get off scot-free. And the best the Republicans can do is, here's $800 million more for Ukraine. Why the hell would Republicans be excited to vote if Trump's not on the ballot? You want to keep your majority? Throw 100 people in jail for political corruption and all the corruption that Doge uncovered. None of those people are in jail. That's like low-hanging fruit, including everybody involved with the auto pen primary, all the 21 state senators in Indiana who just voted with Democrats to oppose congressional redistricting for their own party. They essentially just gave up 2 seats. Abolish the filibuster and just start getting stuff done. Give us nationwide reciprocity. Abolish the income tax. While you're at it, let's deep six the IRS, and then you can sell the building or drone strike it or do whatever you want so nobody can come back to it. And then you can tell the Muslims seeking refugee status to do it in the 56 surrounding Muslim countries that they have rather than here so we don't have to pay their benefits. You do that, you'll gain seats in the House. We'll have 300-seat majority. People like me will be excited to go out and vote because we're not right now. Because if you do that stuff, man, Mike, I'm telling you, I will legit run through a wall like the Kool-Aid dude to get to the polls. But if you don't, you'll lose.
I just shut that tab off. Sorry. I don't agree with everything he said, right? But I wanted to highlight here's $800 million more for Ukraine. It's this never-ending spending. Now, he's not wrong about Republicans trying to get Republicans to go vote in the next election. In the next what do they call it? The
midterms,
right? If this is the way they're going to act, no one's going to jail. No Epstein files released, nothing. And just continue to act like Democrats. They deserve to lose. I'm not going to stand up for them. I'm not going to stand up for them at all. The only ones I'll stand up for are Rand Paul and Thomas Massey. That'd be it. The rest of them can go pound sand. Even our guys like Eric Schmidt and these guys from Missouri, they can go pound sand too because they're falling in line. And they're not doing anything about the spending. Now, the other thing that really chaps my buttocks is all this talk about the Affordable Care Act and ending the subsidies and all this whining. And then they're like, well, we'll just send the money directly to the people. How about you had the majority? You could have said, we're going to just get rid of the ACA and we'll write a new law that says you can buy your insurance from whoever you want to, and we'll create competition and lower prices. No, they won't do it. They will not do it. They are all fully entrenched in it. And you know why? It's because they get great health care. So who cares about what you have, peon? You can get stuck with your higher deductibles, higher premiums, and increasingly crappier care. Don't care. They don't care because they got it. They got the best care. Now, mind you, the ACA was set up to fail. And none of those people, hardly any of those people, Rand Paul did write a bill that says, let's make things cheaper and we'll do it in these ways, right? And I'm fine with that. No one's going to take it seriously. It's not going to make it anywhere, but somebody did make an attempt. Rand Paul is making an attempt. But that ACA was set up to fail from its inception. It was set up to fail and for the people to cry for an outcome and to arrive at a single payer system. That's what they wanted in the beginning, but the American people weren't going to buy that. So they gave them this instead. And they set up a system that is doomed from the beginning. And now you're going to try to push you into a single payer. You watch as years go by and people's deductibles and premiums skyrocket, the people are going to outcry for a fix. The fix should not be, hey, you know what? Yeah, guys, I got a great idea. Let's let the same group of douchebags retry it. Why would you do that? That's been my outcry in social media posts. Anytime I see it, I'm like, if you ask for the same group of douche canoes or newer group of douche canoes to fix the problem that they created, you're stupid. You should want something completely different. You should want, hey, I want you to nullify the ACA, create a law that says I can buy my insurance from any company across any state line that I want. That's going to give me better deductibles, better premiums, better coverage, all these things. That's what I want. But there'll be a whole bunch of people like, let's go for Medicaid for all or Medicare for all. That sounds like a really good idea. And then we'll just finally trash the whole thing. These progressive morons will climb to the top turnbuckle and what is his name? Randy Macho Man Savage off the top rope with their elbow and just right on top of health insurance and just smash it into the mat. And then you progressive morons and slow golf clap for your own demise. Jesus Christ, grow some brain cells. Stop asking people who constantly F things up to fix them for you. Start thinking for yourselves. Use that little bit of whatever cholesterol's up in top of your skull up there, swishing around, sounds like BB's rattling, probably, and figure it out. But dude, when I get on and I see all this, these people's premiums, they're going to go up. Yeah, you caused it. All of you caused it. Yeah. JJ's exactly right. Right. Problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialectic. But dude, I see these posts, dude, I get so fired up because people, and I'll add one last thing before my head explodes, and I'll let Brandon off. The other thing is people are screaming for subsidies, and my question, I posted this in comment sections on social media. I get no response. Listen, people, I'm about as sharp as a bag of wet hair, and I can figure this out. It's not hard. I'm really not that smart. Okay, I'm really not. But if a program is so good and affordable and makes everything better, why do you need subsidies? You're going to turn around and blame it on the insurance companies, the ones who came in and helped write the legislation that made sure they stayed in business and eliminated the smaller competition with a bunch of your Democrat friends? Is that who you're going to blame? Because that doesn't work on me. I might be retarded, but I'm not full blown. So I'm just asking, if it's such a good system and it does such a tremendous job, why does the government have to rob from others, from some, to pay for others and subsidize it? And everybody's supposed to clap like a retarded seal and just cheer you on. Oh God, dude, it really gets me fired up when I see this. But I'll stop talking and I'll chill out and I'll let Brandon give his take.
Well, I can try to give you into the feeble mind of those who buy into this ridiculousness. It's that healthcare is expensive.
And that's
all they know. They don't care about why a hospital charges what it charges. Mm-hmm. They don't care about how the relationship between the insurance company and the hospital. Don't care. The only thing they know is that healthcare and going to the doctor and emergency visits without insurance, if you have decent income, is expensive. That's what they know. And so when they hear how can we make it better, just throw money at it. Oh, if something's expensive, you just put more money towards it. It'll make it less expensive. That's it. And then so whenever the plan backfires and healthcare gets more expensive and worse with these subsidies for anyone who doesn't meet because that's like I was saying a minute ago, the people at the bottom have a nice safety net in America. It's the people in the middle. So once you break that income threshold and you're on your own officially, there's no help for you. You're paying for the people at the bottom. And so, yeah, it's whenever the problem starts to snowball on itself, the answer, because that's what the Democrats tried to claim that the reason they wanted the government shut down is they were pushing for more money into these programs. Because if it's not working, because healthcare is more expensive, then we need more money at it. And so, yeah, until anyone in the general population wants to actually figure out the root cause instead of just the symptom of the situation, as far as healthcare goes, yeah, we're going to be stuck in the same cycle. Now, for that Newsmax video, I found it interesting. There were a couple of things that he omitted in there, which I find interesting. Didn't mention anything about the big beautiful bill and Biden's level of spending on the budget. He mentions eliminating income tax and different things, but doesn't mention the fact that Republicans signed the bill to spend as much as Joe Biden did. Doesn't mention the 51st state in the Middle East. Doesn't mention Venezuela or the aggressive actions we're taking on the in South America right now. And so it bugs me because that's what this new wave of conservatism, like the faux version of it, is what it's become. It's this, we're gonna pretend to be against you on certain issues, we're not establishment, we're mad at Mike Johnson and the establishment because he's not doing enough about the immigration problem and he's not doing enough about healthcare. But then they refuse to mention that like a massive number of young conservatives are so off put by the Republican Party in general's support for Israel, or how a vast majority of independents and right-leaning independents are totally against military operations in Venezuela. And he refuses to mention, like I said, about the budget. And so, again, the conservatives can pretend that they're, fighting the establishment, but I see through that game that it's no different. He might sound a little bit different than the Bill O'Reillys, but when push comes to shove, he's going to be on the same team as the Zionists and as the war party, and always for the spending.
Yeah, and to touch on another part of this too, right? Because we've seen after Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens and some other folks, Clint Russell's out still talking about Charlie Kirk's assassination and how the story doesn't add up and everything. And then people like Levin or Dana Loesch and some of these people out there want to blame Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson for the split in the Republican Party. No, bro, that's on Republicans, because Candace, whether you agree with everything that Candace or Tucker says, right? Whether you agree with everything they say, they're pretty good on a lot of things, and they're pointing out the hypocrisy, and you just can't point out. That's not allowed. You're not allowed to point out Republican and Democrat hypocrisy. That makes them a little upset, makes them want to poopy in their pants. And so, but they want to shift the blame to a couple of people who do podcasts. I thought these same group of people that try to make it sound like podcasters are just nobodies and no one should listen to them also want to blame podcasters for the crack in the Republican Party, the upheaval and the split. That's on you. Again, some of what that guy from Newsmax said, the things that Brandon laid out are the reason the Republicans have so much infighting, because the ones that actually seemingly want less government spending, they don't want to fund these wars, they don't want to fund these countries anymore, are breaking away. Now, where are they going to go? Who knows? Are they going to remain Republicans, but like depending on the candidate, just not show up to elections? Because the ones that are seemingly picked by the people at the national level are some of the worst candidates you could possibly have. They're not going to show up for the same thing they've been fighting against. So you're going to lose all those people. That's on you. You can't put that on Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Clint Russell and Dave Smith and a few others. You cannot do that. No. Now, the worst thing is going into the comment sections of people like Dana Loesch. Oh, they'll fully pile on like a Tucker Carlson or a Candace Owens. I'm like, you all are just Trump sycophants. That's all you are. You're cult members. You're not thinking for yourselves either. Just like the Democrats don't. You're not thinking for yourself either. And Dana Loesch and Mark Levin and all these other schmucks are just bought and paid for Israeli suckers, right? That's what they're there for. They're there to stick up for, I shouldn't say Israeli. What I should say is the current government of Israel, the Likuds. They stick up for the Likuds and people who love genocide and all these other things. That's the people they're going to stick up for. And if you go out of bounds too far and start talking about this 51st state or whatever, then they're going to sick all their little cult members on you. That's like walking into a crowd of chihuahuas. You kick your feet hard enough, you'll send them sailing. That's all I'm saying. They're not why would you be scared of Mark Levin? I know I have a nasally voice, but I don't even think my voice is annoying as his is, right? Or the Dana Leshes or these other people. Why are you scared of them? They're nobodies. The only thing they can hang their hat on is their continued support of a genocidal war party in Israel. So why are you scared of them? They're nothing. They're absolutely nothing. While you retort to that, I'm going to pull up I think I saved a video of Ron Paul talking about Israel on the House floor when he was a congressman. So,
oh, no way. What I really liked about I will say to his credit, the part I liked the most about what that guy was saying from Newsmax is that the accountability is the easy part. Accountability for all of the things that have, like, we're not asking you to right the ship. I mean, we are. I am. I'm like, I'm screaming from the top of my lungs in the warfare state, in the welfare state. Let me keep my money and bring the troops home. But accountability for the wrongs of the past is a bare minimum. It's like he was saying, there's no accountability for COVID. There's no accountability for the auto pen. There's no accountability for Russiagate. I mean, that's the deep state. Like, if you actually went after what you considered the deep state and the old deep state that went after you, that tried to frame you for treason, like, if you held those people responsible, it would do a lot for, like, shifting the momentum among the conservatives that don't care about the welfare state or the warfare state, that just want to see the immigration and revenge on their political enemies. Sure. But that's the easy one. Like he said, that's the slam dunk. And you're just totally showing us that you don't care to drain the swamp, which was like the number one reason people love you. Like, that's the number one reason people love Trump and they love being Republican, is because they want to fight the swamp. They're draining the swamp and they're fighting the swamp. But if you don't arrest anybody and the swamp is still free to roam, then yeah, of course you're going to have absolutely no momentum, because you've got the independents and the people like me who like I said a second ago, want to see these grandeur, drastic changes. But for just the conservatives who are still on your team but want to see you get the wins that you promised, you're failing everywhere. Like, this Trump administration can't do anything right.
Let me. I gotta bring up the page first, and then I'll have to immediately click on the link, because I know it's going to play right off the bat. But here's about 1 minute and 20 seconds of Ron Paul talking about Israel and Hamas and the U.S. creating Hamas. Come on. Oh.
Was encouraged and really started by Israel. If you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel, because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat. You say, well, yeah, that was better then and served its purpose, but we didn't want Hamas to do this. So then we as Americans say, well, we have such a good system, we're going to impose this on the world. We're going to invade Iraq and teach people how to be Democrats. We want free elections. So we encourage the Palestinians to have a free election. They do, and they elect Hamas. So we first, indirectly and directly through Israel, help establish Hamas. Then we have an election. Then Hamas becomes dominant, so we have to kill them. You know, it just doesn't make sense. During the 80s, we were allied with Osama bin Laden. And we were contending with the Soviets. It was at that time our CIA thought it was good if we radicalized the Muslim world. So we financed the madrasa schools to radicalize the Muslims in order to compete with the Soviets. There's too much blowback. There's a lot of reasons why we should oppose this resolution. It is not in the interest of the United States. It's not in the interest of Israel either.
So there's that. Ron Paul lays it out just about better than anybody else can. And he gets right directly to the point. I mean, let's face it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you've watched any of Dave Smith's debates, he brings up different articles and different sources where they confirm this, and like closed door meetings like that have been like some of the stuff that's been leaked from these closed door meetings where the Likud party in Israel has said that we want to keep funding Hamas so we can control the height of the flame. And I think it was right before the October 7th attacks. The head Netanyahu sent the head of the Mossad to Qatar to ensure that funding was still reaching Hamas, because like Ron Paul said in the video, if Yasser Arafat would have been able to help create a two-state solution, it would have crushed all the dreams of the Likud party of occupying all of the West Bank and Gaza and creating what they consider Greater Israel, what the Likud party is currently on the path to do. So, yeah, I mean, everything that Ron Paul said has been confirmed multiple times, that Israel, the government of Israel and the Likud party's strategy was to fund Hamas in an attempt to continue to oppress the people of Palestine who live there. And like he said, they funded them and bolstered them. And so then when they had an election, they got elected. It was a very narrow election victory too. And then they haven't had an election since. So if that wants to tell you how the democracy is going in Gaza and how much control the people actually have. And because you can't forget, when you're talking about all this, a lot of the people in Israel and a lot of Republicans, they refuse to acknowledge that there's a difference between a Palestinian and a Hamas terrorist. They think that every strike is just knocking out terrorists, when that's not true. There have been tens of thousands of women and children slaughtered. And yeah, and it's all fun. It was all originally built and funded by the government of Israel with, can only assume, the help of the United States and some strategy on our part.
Yeah, it is disgusting. And again, people just, I don't know. They just can't let go of the support for the Likud and Netanyahu and their continued domination of an area and turning, the Gaza into basically an internment camp. They just can't let go of that. And I know that, oh God, what's his name? The ambassador to Israel. Why am I
Mike
blanking?
Huckabee.
Mike Huckabee was just at an event with 1,000 Christian pastors, right? Telling them they had to come home and tell their flocks about, you got to support Israel. Got to support them. Why on God's green earth is the U.S. ambassador to Israel bringing 1,000 pastors into an event and telling them they need to go home and tell their people that you have to back Israel? It's biblically, God says you have to do this. And just putting out this propaganda. Why would we ever allow an ambassador to run this kind of a propaganda campaign? This should be one of those things where you're like, that guy needs to get fired immediately. He needs to go.
Well,
he met with a former spy who literally got found guilty of selling information to Israel, which Israel turned around and gave to Russia so that Russia would allow Jews from Russia to come to Israel. And he had a meeting with this gentleman, and nothing has happened to him. So he gets to propagandize 1,000 pastors and have a meeting with a convicted spy. And he still keeps his job. How's that possible? That would be like me going to another transformer manufacturer with a boatload of pictures and be like, hey, this is how we do it here. And then I go back and they're like, oh, it's cool. You can stay. No, I'd be gone immediately. No, dude, you can't do that. There's a what they call a non-disclosure. There's an NDA. You can't do that. Be like, it's fine. I'm just consider me the Mike Huckabee of Hitachi Energy. And they're like, oh, say no more. It's fine. You can keep it. Heck, we'll give you a raise. And then you can go out and tell 1,000 other people that they have to buy these products or that you hate Japan or something. I don't know. But it's just like, how do you get away with that? It's because too many people and the higher ups in the Congress and higher ups in the Republican Party and the Democrat Party are beholden to Netanyahu and AIPAC and any other Israel lobbyist monopolies that operate within the borders of this country. And there should be way more uproar than what we're seeing right now. But, it's just common American behavior. Israel, we've been dealing with that for a long time. It's fine. We'll just keep taking their money and bombing women and children. It's fine. Because it's not happening here, right? It's over there. They're not it's over here. They're bombing. We're bombing. If we have to have Israel do this so that we don't have to fight them over here. So it's better if they fight them over there so that Hamas doesn't come over here and kill a bunch of Americans. Same stupid, tired argument over again.
In fairness to Mike Huckabee, he was one of the people. I'm being sarcastic.
Okay, worry. I was like, wait a minute, bro.
No. In fairness to Mike Huckabee, he was pushing for this guy's release back when he was up for parole, because he did a number of years in the spy you're talking about.
Yeah,
did a number of years in prison in the United States, and at parole hearings and different things. Mike Huckabee was always speaking on his behalf, talking about how he's paid his time and all of this, blah, blah, blah. And so in fairness to Mike Huckabee, he's always been a scumbag. He's consistently a scumbag on this particular issue and this particular guy. And then I don't know if you saw, but Mike Huckabee, I don't know if it was a sit-down interview or if it was just kind of some sort of video he was doing. I saw it when I was scrolling. He was defending Israel's attack on Qatar that killed one Hamas member, like a senior official for Hamas, killed like 8 civilians, was condemned by Qatar, and then condemned by Trump. So Trump condemned this strike that Israel did in Qatar, and Mike Huckabee came out with a video defending the strike, talking about, he was like, they were after the Hamas members, and they're just, the people there was just also happened to be people there when they did the strike. And it's you murdered a bunch of innocent people is what it sounds like. Yeah, that's what the strike did. That's why everyone's upset. Like, oh man, like you said, I can't believe he just gets away with this, and that there's at this point, there's no accountability. It would almost be like one individual thing would be like, wow, that's, that's really crazy of Mike Huckabee to do, but a string of them. Like he was telling the organization, getting all of the pastors, telling them they have to tell their congregations to support Israel. That's shady. And then you have meeting with a spy. That's shady. And then you have, trying to get that spy released. And then you have defending the Qatar attack. It's all shady individually. It's preposterously corrupt, all put together.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know how you can justify any of it. It's makes my head hurt thinking how anyone could be like, well, there had to be. Yeah, of course there's a good reason. He's making bank. He's doing the bidding of another government, which should be kind of, I would say, not kind of, it is treasonous. And you just, I don't know, just let it slide. And on top of that, right? So we have to fight Hamas terrorists. We have to fight. We have to fund Israel. We have to eliminate the Hamas terrorists. But we'll let an al-Qaeda guy who's now the president of Syria into the White House and have a meeting with him. Gee, Republicans, I don't know why people are so mad at you right now. I don't know why there's Republicans who are splitting away and voicing their concerns or displeasure with you. I just can't figure it out. Why on earth would they do that? So we're funding the elimination of certain terrorists while also funding other terrorists and then promoting a former Al Qaeda member as the president of Syria and somehow he's a good guy now. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why you people are complaining. It all sounds completely legitimate to me. It sounds like normal government. You should be used to this by now. I don't know why we're complaining, Brandon. We should just be numb to this whole thing, desensitized.
Well, I got another example of America. It's roundabout, it's indirect, but we're funding both sides of a war. So I've mentioned on the show a couple times that the United States has set a record this year for number of airstrikes in Somalia. The number of airstrikes is over 100, which does not include the number of bombs that's been dropped. That's the number of like executed plans that include dropping any number of bombs. I don't know if you've heard about all this fraud going on in Minnesota. There was a confidential but a confidential informant or somebody had came on record, not on record, but had said that a lot of the money funneling from Minnesota is going to Somalia because a lot of the fraud was people from the Somali area of Minnesota, of Minneapolis. They were creating these businesses. They were creating making LLCs to create fake businesses to send invoices to the government who would then send them money. And then they were taking that money and sending it to Somalia, where the group that the United States is bombing called Al-Shabaab, they apparently are a large recipient of a lot of the money that had been sent over. So the United States is bombing a group, and that group is then collecting a lot of the fraudulent welfare money that had been distributed in Minnesota. So in a roundabout way, the government is once again funding both sides of a conflict. But then I also want to mention that 2 Iowa National Guard members were killed in Syria over the weekend. Sergeant Edgar Brian Torres Tavar of Des Moines and Sergeant William Nathaniel Howard, 29 of Marshalltown. They were Iowa National Guardsmen. And just something I want people to think about for just a minute is, were those lives completely necessary? Did we have to lose those lives? Like, should those soldiers, did they have to be in Syria? Was it 100% necessary to the security of the nation of the United States that those 2 young men had to be killed in Syria? Because we can talk about the budget and we can talk about how America looks on the world stage and whatever, but the reason that I am passionately anti-war is this right here, is that it's the human cost. It's too, these guys, I don't know much about if they had families, or I'm sure they had parents. I'm sure there are tons of, that's what I'm saying, is that there is no monetary cost. The only, when a soldier loses his life, the only question you should ask is, was it 100% necessary? And if the answer is no, it is insane to put our soldiers in these kinds of positions. And so I think now it's super important for everyone to look up any sort of defend the guard legislation that's happening in your state. And when it comes up again in Missouri, to make sure you call your representatives to push, to make sure that if something like this happens, you've done everything in your power to make sure that to prevent more National Guardsmen from being killed.
So just to add a little bit to this, this article from CBS News, what to know about Minnesota fraud allegations as Trump levels attacks on walls. Let me share my screen here. A series of multi-million-dollar alleged fraud schemes in Minnesota has drawn the Trump administration's attention in the recent weeks, vaulting an issue that has brewed in state politics for years into the national conversation. President Trump has called Minnesota a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity and has lashed out against the state's Somali community as most of the fraud defendants were of Somali descent, drawing stiff criticism from local officials. This week, the administration launched enhanced immigration operations in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. So this goes back to a Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. 3 years ago, federal prosecutors in Minnesota filed the first charges in what they described as the largest pandemic fraud in the United States. The $250 million scheme, which now includes upward of 75 defendants, revolved around a nonprofit group called Feeding Our Future that partnered with the Minnesota Department of Education and U.S. Department of Agriculture to distribute meals to children. During the pandemic, prosecutors say Feeding Our Future and its affiliated food distribution sites submitted fake meal count sheets and invoices to trick state and federal officials into thinking that it helped serve food to thousands of children. The group allegedly raked in millions in administrative fees for the fake meal distributions and got kickbacks from people who ran their distribution sites, according to federal charging documents. Feeding Our Future's founder, Amy Bach, was convicted at trial earlier this year. Several other defendants, including distribution site operators, have pleaded guilty or been convicted, in some cases receiving multi-year prison sentences and being ordered to pay millions in restitution. One defendant also pleaded guilty to attempting to bribe a juror after a member of the jury in his fraud trial found a bag with $120,000 in cash at her home. But I'm pretty sure some of this stuff got swept under the rug as to just be like, Walls and them act like nothing going on here. Of course, he's probably eyeballing a run at some higher government office, and this would not be a good scandal to have with his name all over it. I mean, that's a good way to possibly ruin your political career, unless you can swing the courts and everything else in your favor and try to hush it, or like I said, sweep it under the rug so nobody sees anymore, or if they, distracts you away from this. But yeah, $250 million at the minimum in fraud. But I'm pretty sure I've seen some articles where some of those people are not going to be tried. Like they're just like, and they're doing everything in their power. But again, like you said, Brandon, there's other frauds going to Somali. Maybe that's not even the right one. There might be a different one.
Well, that was the right article, but it was
okay.
So the main I can't remember what the name of it was called, but the main fraud came from that food program that they were talking about. But they think that if you added up the fraud, like on top of that, it was closer to like $1 billion.
Yeah, I did see some
wasted
like
in
that
fraudulent
too, yeah.
payments.
So I'm trying
if you look at like mainstream articles, they say that there's no evidence of a direct tie between the people in Somalia and Al-Shabaab, which is probably true. But what they say is that the reason some people believe that Al-Shabaab has a lot of this money is that when it gets sent over, there's no definite way of tracking where it goes from there. And a lot of the businesses and people who live in Somalia are extorted by Al-Shabaab. So even if the people who are getting the money in Somalia aren't directly funding Al-Shabaab, they're likely being extorted, and that money is making its way to them in some way.
Yeah. I love how Ilhan Omar, she ain't saying nothing. She's not saying a word, bro.
She's taking the Bill Eigel approach.
Yeah. Heck, she's probably got some of that money. She's probably in on it. Knowing her and her antics, some of the things that she's done. I remember, I think Rand Paul kind of really burned her one time by saying that, she comes in, she wants to trash the country, but when she got here, she was a welfare recipient and got all this funding to get her on her feet. Now she wants to turn around and trash talk the whole country. Like, yeah, how nice of you. You were willing to come in here, become a U.S. citizen, and take boatloads of cash, but now suddenly we're just a racist country, and we hate black people, and we hate brown people, and just white privilege everywhere. It's like, you weren't saying any of that when you're getting all that handout, all that welfare. You didn't say a word. And I would really like to see how much her fortune has grown since she's been in Congress. Because I bet she's worth many millions of dollars now. And I don't hear anything about her like giving that out to the less fortunate. Probably not happening much. She's probably keeping that all for herself while she plays the race card and divides the population against itself and everything else. The same freaking game the rest of them play, just a different name from originating from a different company or a different country, but playing the same game. I mean, she plays it well. She gets a lot of people to buy in on it. And when Obama, allowed all these Somalis to come into the country and ship them to different states like Minneapolis, St. Paul, then suddenly here's a Somali being voted into Congress, and yeah, it just worked out really slick. I don't know, dude.
Well, it's funny too because like these leftist champions, they're like the new wave conservatism movement, where they don't actually vote different than like the establishment Democrats.
Nope.
They just get the popularity of pretending to be anti-establishment. But Ilhan Omar, AOC, the whole squad,
Rashida Tlaib.
Yeah, they campaign like Bernie Sanders and they vote like Nancy Pelosi. And so
just like that Jasmine Crockett. Man, she's a trip.
Bro.
Going to run for Senate now. Dude, I have never seen anybody who can run did you see? I don't know. I heard her last campaign video. It was just clips of Trump. That was it. And then she had somebody write a rap song, and that was like a rap song for her, and it's horrific. I'm not much of a rap.
Did she rap it, or did the other person
this other rap artist did everything.
I was going to say, dude, whoever's running her campaign's got it figured out. They're like, the less Jasmine Crockett we put on screen, the better for her campaign.
It's just weird how, it's just weird how when she gets out in front of a large crowd, she'll speak one way, right? And then she goes full Ebonics mode in another spot, right? When she goes to talking. Like there's a switch that flips, and it's like the Ebonics person, that's the real candidate. I'm not saying Ebonics makes you, talking on the Ebonics makes you a bad candidate, but I'm saying there's a fake personality over here at big campaign events, but when she's not in there and she's around smaller groups, like that angry black woman comes right out, and the Ebonics and everything.
I can't remember if we talked about it on here, but she got in trouble for a Jeffrey Epstein thing.
Yeah, we did. We played that on the show.
Where she was like, look, it was a different Jeffrey Epstein, sure, but I wasn't trying to mislead people. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you were trying to tell the public that all of these Republicans were funded by Jeffrey Epstein. And she's like, I said a Jeffrey Epstein, not the Jeffrey Epstein. If you listen to what I said, it's like,
no, we heard you.
We heard you. In fact, what's funny is you didn't tell a lie, but you were intentionally trying to mislead people. Like, that's the funny part, is like what you said is literally true. A guy named Jeffrey Epstein was funding those Republicans, but it wasn't the Israeli aligned pedophile. It was just some doctor from New York, I believe,
who had it was unfortunately born with the same name as some big perv.
Yeah.
Dude, can you imagine having the name Jeffrey Epstein in today's world? Like, you couldn't leave your house without somebody just ribbing you. Like, hey, you going to go to your island now? Like, I would assume that, like, after a while, one of those guys is going to commit mass murder. He's going to have enough of the joking. He's going to be in a bar one night. Like, hey, Jeffrey, how's it going? Are you going back to your island? And he just starts murdering people with a beer bottle. And they're like,
yeah,
what? I don't know, man. I think it was too many Epstein jokes. And the guy finally snapped. I'm like, oh.
I knew a guy whose last name was Hitler at one point. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, his last name was Hitler. And I'm like, boy, don't know if I would have stuck with that one past 18. I think maybe I mean, I'm not all for changing my last name, but I think if it was Hitler, I might have to change it.
I might.
Or if it was Stalin, like if my last name was Stalin, I think I'd probably change that.
Can you imagine trying to justify why you wouldn't want to change your last name if it was Hitler? They're like, bro, you're going to change it? Nah, I'm good. They're like, really? And he's like, yeah, I didn't kill Jews. I'm just My last name's Hitler. My first name's not Adolf. And they're
I
like,
would
no
have to
interest?
change it just so everyone would stop, like you said, just so everyone would stop being like, oh, last name Hitler. I'd be so sick. I'd be like, dude, changing it to Doe, anything.
Yeah.
But
Like, where's your mustache? Like, dude, I'm not the same guy. Like, really? Like, if you don't shave for a few days, that little bitty mustache isn't going to pop out from under your nose? No, it's not.
I will say there's a guy who comes into the restaurant that I work at, and he's got one of those, and nobody doesn't look like Hitler when they have one of those mustaches. You can't pull it off. To just wondering if 80 years later, if the tiny mustache still makes you look like Hitler, yes, you don't look like Michael Jordan
Or
You
Charlie
look like-
Chaplin, you know?
Yeah, no, you're not pulling off a Charlie Chaplin with one of those. You'd have to literally wear the top hat and a cane to even attempt to pull that
And then
off.
just do silent films like Order Silently and like, oh, it's a Charlie Chaplin fan. He's like, I have to do this or people think I love Hitler. And you're like, oh, cool.
Or you could just shave, buddy.
Yeah.
like
Or
you're
paint
so
the
dead-
mustache white or something. Don't leave it black and dark and
oh yeah, it's like the one I was describing. It's dark. It's a
yeah,
it's a
no, you can't
full-on-
do that.
Mm-mm.
It's full on Hitler stash. I couldn't do that. I remember years ago, dude. It hasn't been that long ago, but a couple, I want to say, I don't remember where it was at, if it was in Missouri or where it was at, but this couple got mad because they went to like a Schnucks or some store to have a birthday cake made. Now, these parents were, they were racist. They named their kid Aryan Nation, whatever the last name was. And they got mad because of places like, we are not making a cake with that on there. Like, no.
Oh, what?
And nobody stood up for him. Nobody's like, it's not like the gay couple thing in Oregon or wherever. Like, you got to make the cake. Everybody's like, no, bro, you don't have to make that cake. Like, no one's going to bat for you except other white supremacists. But yeah, literally their kid was Aryan Nation, whatever the last name was. Like, your kid's going to get the crap beat out of it every day. You just sentence your kid to a lifetime of butt kicking.
Well, what's funny is until the kids are like 13, they're not even going to know what that even means.
Yeah.
Like when I was 12, if someone maybe 12, but I don't know if at 10, if someone would have been like Aryan Nation, if I would have been like, oh, that guy's parents are super racist. I mean, I'm sure don't get me wrong, I'm sure there were signs, but you know,
Can you imagine, like, they move to a new neighborhood and it's predominantly black and they're going around and like that kid goes to school and like, yes, we have a new student today, and the teacher's like, oh my God. I'm just gonna call you Ari for short. Is that okay? Because I'm not gonna say this name out loud, or every kid in here is gonna pile on you and beat the snot out of you. They're like, like some parents just set their kids up for failure with, it's like that Johnny Cash song, A Boy Named Sue. Like, you're just going to get punched because like, that's what you're doing. You're just a boy named Sue, but way, way, way over the line. We're going to name our kid Aryan Nation, whatever. And it's like, now I have to look it up. I don't remember that, I don't remember how long ago it was. Let's see.
yeah, like
It was just like, wow, this is insane. Okay. This was, oh God, was it this long ago? I feel so old now. 2008. I guess it was longer. Okay. All the stupid pop-ups that come up on my screen. Let's see. Okay, so in Holland Township, Joyce Lynn Aryan Nation Campbell, Hanselin Hindler Janine Campbell, and Adolf Hitler Campbell. Good names for a trio of toddlers? Heath and Deborah Campbell think so. The Holland Township couple had picked those names, and the oldest child, Adolf Hitler Campbell, turns 3 today. This has given rise to a problem because the ShopRite supermarket in Greenwich Township has refused to make a cake for young. Okay, so it was young Adolf's birthday. God dang, man. At the very end, what do you think? Was ShopRite correct for refusing to personalize a cake for the Campbells? No, they're not wrong. They're right. I wouldn't make a cake that said "Happy Birthday, Adolf Hitler."
Oh, who puts the middle name on a cake anyway?
But it's just
I've never had anything more than a first name.
Why would you name your kid Adolf Hitler Campbell? Because like graduation time, right? Generally, you put the full name. A lot of times, you put the full name on the graduation on the diploma. Can you imagine reading that out, kids? Like they just read off the names and they're like Adolf Hitler Campbell. No one's gonna clap except the parents. You're gonna hear two people. The rest of that place is gonna be. You're gonna have pin drop. Like parents are gonna be like, wait a minute, that kid's name is Adolf Hitler Campbell.
Yeah. You'll have everyone in the
dude.
crowd. Everyone in the crowd would just immediately turn to look at the parents. Dude, I bet 3-1 all three of those kids have mullets.
Oh yeah. I can't. God dang it, Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey says my middle name is the N-word. God dang it, dude. Anyway, that's funny. He's joking. Of course it's not, but he has to insert comical stuff. Can you imagine though if somebody gave their kid their middle name was the N-word?
Oh, man.
Holy crap, dude. You're gonna have to move to Germany. Like, even it's not even a fly there. You're gonna have to go deep south. Where they're like,
well, the
come on
problem
in,
with
buddy.
the deep south too is that you'd have to be real racist, or because you're gonna have one or the other. You're gonna have most people who are like, "That's a dumb," but you have the people who are maybe way too excited that that's your middle name.
They're like,
we finally get to say it. You'd only be.
Every time you fill out something, you get to write it down, and you can't even get in trouble. This is the greatest thing ever. This is the best day of my life. All right. Any parting thoughts before we wrap up tonight, Brandon? Oh God,
Just stay vigilant against tyranny as always.
Absolutely. And again, to those of you who listen on a podcasting app or you watch this on YouTube, Facebook, or Rumble, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a rating or review. We'd greatly appreciate it. And to those of you who listen at molibertyradio.us, we also greatly appreciate you. And with that being said, we will be right back here next week, Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. for another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report.
I put a whole